In divorce and custody, man or woman, it is vital that you do not get undeserved protective orders put on you. This is a huge thing. You do not want restraining orders. You do not want any violence. You do not want a protective order against you. So in all of that, how does a judgment like this get passed through? How do we prevent it? How is it a threat? And it is the most important thing. It is so important. If this is on the table, if you found out that you're going through a separation and your ex or soon to be ex talks to a lawyer, you talk to a lawyer, and there's a potential of a protective order that has to be killed. Number one, because if that gets set, it's going to influence every single judge, every single mediator, every attorney that you have to get after that to side on the wrong side of things. All right. So very, very, very important. We're going to go over a lot in this, and there's some other videos that I have on this. And if you're going through this, I'm just going to say this right now, get in my groups. All right. There's a group for men, the Rising Man. There's a group for women that is forming. Get in my groups. If you did not harm your kids, if you're not a danger, if you have maybe some mental illness that you're medicated for, or you have a history of violence, but are not violent to your kids are not in any threat, get in my groups, talk to me, work it out. It's going to help with your whole process. Okay, let's get started. Whoa. So when we enter into the legal system and we're entering into divorce and custody, we have to know a couple things which are very, very important. And there's other videos on this. I have guides on this. They're very hard to look at when we're emotionally charged, but you have to understand how alimony is set. You have to understand how child support is set if you have children. You have to understand how custody is set if you have kids. And you also have to understand how property is divided. Okay, so those are like the four main things that you have to know how the court sees this. And you have to hit the baseline of whatever it is you want. So if you want full custody, you have to understand how people get full custody through the courts in your county. So I'm giving you general ideas, and I'm not a lawyer. I've just been through this a lot, and I've coached just thousands of guys on this, and we're starting to coach women and all this sort of stuff. And it's really important. And the more that we can educate people on this, the more that we can have people go into court, not rely on emotional reactivity, manipulating judges, courts, juries, mediators, and so on. And we can actually get how this thing works. Because when we do it right, it's really black and white. Okay, really, really black and white. What matters most in custody? We need to understand this first and fundamentally. Who are the kids best with? What's in the best interest of the children? Now, we could talk to our friends, we could talk to our family, we could talk to some lawyer friend of ours, all bad ideas to determine how the court, how a judge is going to rule what is in the best interest of the kids. Even if your lawyer friend is whatever, he's not responsible for you or she's not responsible for you. They're giving you advice. You haven't retained them, you're not working with them. You have to listen to your lawyer, and in that you also have to learn how to pick a good lawyer, which is kind of like the rite of passage in all of this, which is horrible, that you usually get screwed over by a lawyer or two beforehand. So I really want to educate people on that too. Other videos, just get in my groups. It's the easiest fix. It's going to save you just tens, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay a monthly fee, okay, for 2 months or 3 months or whatever you need for it, maybe longer. But in all of this, you want to be able to determine how that court is going to determine custody. And you need to speak that language. That means who takes the kids to school, who preps them for bed, who cooks them food, who makes sure that they're fed, who takes them to the doctor, who does whatever. Now check this out. This is why this is really important. A lot of times we get that this person has a violent past. This person has a drug addiction past. This person is still an alcoholic. This person's still a drug addict. This person has been abusive. This person had the cops called on him, 2 years ago for X, Y, and Z. Those are all factors, but they don't necessarily have to affect if that child is in danger with you or those children are in danger with you. Okay, so I want you to understand this. So my attorney told me, so one of the threats against me was I had a criminal charge, a felony charge of child abuse, which eventually got reversed 8 years later. But at the time, of my custody case, the charge wasn't admitted. Actually, it wasn't reversed. It was admitted to be a mistake. So when I have that, I went to my attorney and I'm like, look, I have this. And he goes, Steve, it doesn't matter. He's like, it matters for your character. It matters maybe for some argument, but it actually doesn't matter. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he actually told me, he said, Steve, I've gotten somebody who is convicted of murder, full custody. I was like, what? And he goes, because it's a separate thing. If I can prove that they're a good parent, then I can get them the custody that they deserve. The court wants you to be able to see your kids. You might not agree with that. And I get it. They're unfair. I get that argument. But if you're stuck having that argument and you throw out the information I've given you, you are putting yourself in a losing position. You're maintaining a victim mentality. You're keeping men, or if you're a woman, you're keeping yourself weak. You need to care about your case, not about the politics of it, not about any of that stuff. So when we get into this, you need to put on paper, it's actually in Divorce and Custody, the Survival Guide for Men, how much of your roles as a parent are there. Those are super important. That has to exist in order for you to be considered as a primary caretaker. Okay. So that means the person who makes all the decisions, the person who gets child support and so on. The person who's going to have the most power in this custody thing. Now, you can't just have it how it was. I get it. You may have tucked the kids into bed or whatever. You're getting a divorce. It's going to be some court mandated division of how you see the kids. Okay, so that's going to happen. You have to accept that. It's not going to be every day. It could be 50-50, could be 60-40, it could be 40-60. It could be just a couple of weekends here and there. You have to accept that there's going to be a change, and you want to start thinking, what change do I want? If you want primary, you have to tick the boxes of all those things. It doesn't matter if you were the rock star dad or mom. If you're the one who is taking them to school, if you're the one taking them into the doctor, buying them clothes, dealing with their specific issues, whoever is going to be on the leaning side of that is just, if there's no contesting, there's no problems, there's no addiction, there's no nothing, that is the standard of who is going to be the primary caretaker. It doesn't have to do with money. It doesn't have to do with your future of success. It doesn't even have to do with if you have a mental illness problem or an addiction issue. Now, what matters if you have an issue around mental illness, addiction, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is that you're violent, you have a violent history, any of these things. And actually, in the actual call that we're dealing with, the last two clients that I went over this with big time, they don't have any of those issues. But I'm just saying it because it oftentimes gets brought up as the smoking gun to screw over the other parent, right? The other legal team is focusing on this. You have to realize that is not something which automatically takes away custody. So I'm an addict in recovery. I'm well known. Huge thing, right? I've overdosed. I've done all this stuff. It may have been 14 years ago. Actually, that was 20 some odd years ago. But my addiction is arrested, and I can show that I handle that in a way that the court accepts and recognizes. Almost every court in the United States recognizes is a way for treating that. And it's huge because the courts, although family law is different than, stuff that happens in addiction issues, which is criminal and so on. But the court recognizes that my path of dealing with that works. Even if I were 6 months clean or 2 months clean, and I was going to like 12-step meetings or smart recovery meetings or something, working with a therapist or a psychologist, there's many different roads to this. But if I was doing what the court realizes is a treatment for having chemical dependency, alcohol issues, then that means that I could be a good parent. It doesn't mean that they're just going to give it to me, but I need to make that argument. If my ex is saying I'm a drug addict and I'm a danger, I need to make that argument in the way that the court understands. Okay, so this is very, very important. If I have mental health issues, something like PTSD, something like depression, something like manic issues, maybe I have to get put on an antipsychotic. Maybe, I take Seroquel or Haldol or something like that, and a psychiatrist works with me on it, and I dialogue with that psychiatrist, and I talk to that psychiatrist about being a father, being a mother, whatever your issues are. That is the protocol that the court will accept for that. Now, the other party needs to prove, like let's say with mental health issues or addiction issues, they need to prove that I'm not doing those things, or if I am doing those things, I'm doing something else. I'm going to AA meetings or whatever it is. I'm going to a therapist. I'm working with a psychiatrist, but I'm overstepping the line. I'm lying to my psychiatrist. I'm using drugs still. Whatever it is, right? They have to prove that that is the case. Otherwise, it's not the case. Now, it's still a ding against me. But my attorney, and this is why you have to have a good attorney, you need to talk to your attorney about this. Okay, they're trying to attack me with mental illness. They're trying to attack me with being violent. They're trying to attack me with being afraid for their lives. They're trying to attack me with being a drug addict. They're trying to attack me with dealing drugs. How do I show the court that this isn't happening specifically? This is very important, because what is a protective order going to get put against you with? It's going to be putting your kids in danger. It is so dangerous that the state has to step in and say, you cannot see your kids. Okay. So you have to understand the way they're attacking you. The way they're attacking you has to be proven wrong. But not only that, it's not proven wrong like my friends say this and I think this and she's an asshole, he's an asshole, whatever it is. It's none of that. It's that I am taking, this either is not an issue, it's never been an issue, and here are my ways to prove that. So lawyer, how do I prove that? This is what you have to do. And it's of utmost importance if a protective order is on the table. And in addition to all of that, if there's any history of it, you have to show that you've taken the right protocol for it. Now, let's say this, you got a DWI or DUI, something like that, and they're trying to bring that up. It was like 3 years ago. You didn't really go to AA meetings or whatever, but I would recommend, and you should talk to your lawyer about this, but bring this up to your lawyer. This is going to save you time and money with your lawyer massively. And it's going to save your lawyer, who's probably overworked and managing too much stuff and may not care that much, really focus on what is important. Part of that is you go, could I go to AA meetings now and get a court card signed? And a court card you could make, you just get a piece of paper, they sign it. You go to Zoom meetings, they sign it. You can get them to email you. It's real easy to do. You can do that. And then you can go to the courts and just say like, look, man, I was so afraid that this was being brought up. I just wanted to prove that I take this seriously. I don't think I'm an alcoholic. I haven't had any problems, but I'm willing to go and do the steps and get a sponsor and whatever because my kids are that important to me. Now, that may not be the right thing to say, but I would ask your attorney that instead of just yelling and being dramatic and going, dude, I don't have these problems. She's a liar. No, we need to stop and disprove that lie. Okay. So when it comes to mental health, that's the same thing too. You need to understand that if you have a mental health issue, if you have something that they can prove, it doesn't mean you can't see your kids. All right. You need to prove that you're doing due diligence around that. So let's say you're not going for primary. Let's say you're not going for 50-50. You're going and you're accepting being a weekend dad, or in Texas, they have expanded standard, which is kind of like you get to see the kids 35-40% of the time. It's pretty cool. It's good. That's what I have. That's what I opted towards. As you know, in my story, I had full power to get full custody and to put a protective order against my ex. But the reason why I didn't do that is because this is so terrible. It's so terrible. It's damaging for the kids. So what you need to then prove, if you just want to be a weekend dad, is that you can be a dad. Okay. It doesn't mean that you need to prove that you take the kids to school. You do if you have to, that you buy the kids clothes, you take them to the doctor, you are, feeding them, all this sort of stuff, all that sort of crap, right? It's not crap, but you get it. But all that sort of stuff, you need to put that you're just a good dad. You're good enough. And then you get awarded that. Okay. So that's the language that we have to hit. Now, everybody watching this is going, well, how did I get screwed over in court? Okay. Let's go to this. How does a false protective order get put in place? How? And let's think back on this. We're not speaking the language of the courts. We get dramatic in the courtroom. We do something stupid like we message our ex. Let's say she's trying to get a restraining order and the cops are thinking about it. They decide to enforce it. But you show up at the house or you text her and you say, man, why are you doing this? That is not allowed. Do not do that. You're in a legal battle. Speak through lawyers. Do that. It's not about friends and all this other shit and whatever. All right. So it's not something that you're going to try and handle personally. And this is what happens. All right. It's not like you go in there and you're being stupid. You've tried to prepare, but you prepared in the wrong way. You have to prepare in the right way. And this is something you've never done before. You need help. You need guidance on it. And your attorney is probably overworked and not able to go over everything with you. So you go into the courts and they start saying, Mr. Maeda, are you a drug addict? Did you traffic drugs and force your ex to use drugs and have sex in all these ways? I'm like, what the fuck what? This is insane. And I go, no, this is insane. You're going to listen to that? Like, what? Fuck that. And they go, what? Mr. Maeda, you're in contempt of court. You need to calm down. You need to do whatever, and da-da-da-da. Like, let's say I represent myself. I go pro se. And I start speaking to the absurdity of what the other party is telling me, which is really common. The other party, they get a good case. Here's what they're trying to do. They're trying to overwhelm you with money for attorney fees. They're trying to overwhelm you with your emotions and think like, oh my God, everything's being, vice gripped on me and I'm being crushed. I'm going to lose my kids. They're saying I'm an abuser and the judge might believe it. No, you freak out, right? When you freak out, when you get upset, you make it impossible for your case to be argued. I get it. It's absurd. That's why I'm trying to help you. It's going to be absurd. Get in my groups. I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, please help yourself. It's going to be absurd. It's going to be ridiculous. But you can't argue. You have to speak the language of the courts back. You have to say, well, look, I've read those arguments. You actually want an attorney who's used to doing this, who's not afraid to talk, who understands that this could go to a trial, meaning there's a jury and it gets really expensive and they feel that they can defend you and they're not afraid to defend you. You need to go to that. You need to take that route and you need to be able to articulate in the right way. Well, yeah, I had some mental health issues. I've had them always. I see a psychiatrist. I follow everything that they do, blah, 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 blah. And then the other attorneys are saying like, well, are you willing to have those records subpoenaed? And then your answer, you want to discuss this with your attorney, but your answer is if that is to prove that I am a good father and did everything I could possibly do to make sure my kids are safe and grow up in a happy home, absolutely. That's how I would answer it. But again, this is big. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not your lawyer, and I don't know the judge that's in front of me deciding this. And that's really important because your judge kind of determines everything. They can throw out evidence. It can go all sorts of different ways. Understand your courtroom. One of the guys in our group's Josh, who's set to make content that is going to be amazing. I can't wait till he does for divorced dads and so on. He works in the court system. He's gone through his own custody battle. But he will tell you, he's like, man, if you're up against this and it's important to you, go in and watch judges, go in and watch trials, watch them on Zoom, whatever it is, and see how it works and get to know it. It's going to help so much. It might take you 5 hours, but that's going to save you huge. You're going to see how stuff goes wrong. So this is crazy. A protective order is going to get placed on you. Yes, we get it. Somebody's lying. Yes, we get it that the courts can suck. But it's going to get put on you if you do something stupid and careless, like a restraining order has been set or it's being entertained, and you show up and try and make communication and argue. It's also going to get put if you start stalking your ex or stalking your kids or doing something like that. I get it. They're your kids. But you show up to school inappropriately, you do some weird thing, you tell your kids this, you post on social media, you do something that could be seen as threatening, it's going to lean on the side of you having a protective. It can. Don't screw this up. It's not deserved. I get it. I deal with guys all day long on this. It's not deserved, but that's how it can get set. The other way is you don't speak the language of the courts. You totally screw up. You hired an attorney. That attorney's lazy. They didn't know how to represent something, and things were neglected. So you need to take initiative on all of this and understand, how can I disprove this? If I want primary custody, I need to be an active parent in the daily roles of that child. And if I have a mental illness or a drug problem or a history of violence, and I am the primary taking kids there, You have to prove that it doesn't affect me taking them to school, getting them up, so on. There could be an argument like when you put them to bed or take them to school in whatever ways, you're all freaked out and whatever. It doesn't matter. Do I take them to school? Does the job get done? So they can say, I do that better than you, but you're the one doing it more and doing it badly, as they're trying to say. That would lean more in your favor. You want to ask your attorney this, right? And you want your attorney to be focused on this. An attorney will like working with you more. So there's lazy attorneys, there's bad attorneys, there's deceptive attorneys, but there's good attorneys. You want to be able to find those good ones. Watch other videos on that. But in finding a good attorney, if you do work that helps them, they're going to want to work with you. It's going to make them easier. It's going to make it easier to work with you. It's super, super important, okay? So the other thing too, if this all happens and why you need to understand why it is bad, and perhaps I should have said this at the beginning, maybe I'll re-record an intro to this, but if you screw this up, if you get a protective order put on you, it is going to be the first thing a judge sees, a mediator sees, and if you have to switch lawyers, another lawyer sees. That other lawyer is going to think, oh my God, this is a big case. I don't want to touch it. Or they could be the best lawyer in the world, but they realize it's a case that's going to be heavy stress. And they're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this unless I'm charging, a retainer of $20,000 or something, whatever. It just makes that harder. So your legal process is going to be harder in finding the proper representation. In front of a mediator, in front of a judge, and most likely if you have a protective order, it's in front of a judge, you are going to have to answer that first. You could be proving that you're the best parent. You're the best parent. But why was this 2-week protective order put on you? Why? So it's just so, like, that's the first thing they're going to see. They're only going to deal with that. And if you break it in any way, you immediately go to jail. Okay, so if you are in court and it's face-to-face court, I know we have a lot on Zoom now, and you go into the parking lot and you see your ex, and you wave at her or whatever, or you send her a text message and you're in a line of sight, you are violating that protective order. Mandatory you go to jail in most states and counties. Mandatory. So you can't mess these things up. It makes everything harder. Think about how hard that is. And in any sort of mediation setting, it's just you're seen as a criminal. Friends and family now on social media, she can post that you're a criminal. She can post that you're a terrible person. This is huge, right? You don't want to make this mistake. So one last thing. Let's say we don't speak the language of the courts. Everything's going crazy. Why then would a protective order be set? You just made it impossible for you to represent yourself because you're yelling. She's giving you absurd accusations, or he's giving you absurd accusations. And you now are getting mad in the courtroom. You're unable to argue and properly prove or disprove whatever the situation is. And that judge now is forced, because he's got 20 other cases, 6 more hours of this shit. That judge now has to is put in a position where he or she is forced to decide what might be in the best interest, because you just screwed up the process. And more than likely, that judge is just going to say, hey, let's go with what's safe. One side just told me, in the language of the courts, this absurd story that may or may not be true, but the other party can't communicate. And I'm asking them to communicate, and they can't. And their attorney can't. And maybe their attorney doesn't know the whole situation, doesn't know how to argue the argument because, nobody paid attention to that. So I'm just going to go on the safe side, and I'm going to give a 2-week protective order. You are effed. You are effed because you let something happen that you could have changed. You could have learned the argument. You could have targeted the argument. You could have killed it. And you could have gotten on with figuring out what is fair, custody, and all this sort of stuff. Now, this is important that we understand this, what determines custody. This is important that we understand this, what determines alimony, what determines your visitation, your child support, your property division. If you do not get that, you're going to screw it up. You're going to screw it up. Get off all the political crap. Get off all of the friends giving you advice. They're there for support. That's good. You need them. But get into a solution to get what you deserve. You do not want an extra $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 of debt. You do not want child support that's going to crush you. You want to be able to see your kids. You know what a protective order does to the kids? It hurts them. It hurts them. It hurts your ex who's putting it on you. Fix it. All right, that is the most important thing. So for men, for women, anybody who works with me, fix it, get it right, learn the courts, don't screw it up, cut the drama out of it, cut the political crap out of it. If we want to change the laws, fix your case. You know, the world's unfair. Fix your case, do better, live a good life, and then go follow the proper protocol to legislation and how laws get changed. That's how it works. You want to change the court systems that are unfair? Get your life together and learn how to lobby properly or hire a lobbyist and all that sort of stuff. Okay, cool stuff. All right, that is it for the video. Please get in my groups, get educated in this, and empower yourself. It's going to save you a huge amount of money. I have free stuff out there, but really just get on the calls and talk and work this stuff out because it'll add some reality to your situation and it will make things right. Okay. Have a good one.